Welcome back, everybody. We are tucked away in a little corner of the property today because we have a nasty windstorm going on, but this is time-sensitive news, so I want to get it out to you guys as fast as possible. So please excuse us not being out on the dock like we typically are. But what is going on is that as of this morning and right now, as of when I'm recording this, President Biden is supposedly giving a press conference discussing what he is going to do to further erode the civil rights of Americans by restricting their ability to defend themselves and their families as they see fit. So basically, the White House put out a press release this morning, and it detailed exactly what his plans are. And his plans are to do this all through executive action. But keep in mind, anytime a president does things through executive action, well, 98% of the time when a president does things through executive action, they still require some type of funding mechanism. So there is a way that a lot of this can be stopped, and we will get to that here in just a second. So I went through the bullet points that they went over, and then basically the explanation of what they're planning to do, and I'm going to try to translate it into something that actually means real things to real people, real gun owners in America. And I'm not going to go through all of them, just through sort of the highlight ones. So the first bullet point they mentioned is that they're going to increase the number of background checks by ensuring that all background checks required by law are conducted before firearms purchases, moving the U.S. as close to universal background checks as possible without additional legislation. So, of course, we want to always mention that background checks are completely unconstitutional and absolutely are a violation of the Second Amendment. But how does President Biden plan on doing this? Well, they say specifically the president is directing the Attorney General to move the U.S. as close to universal background checks as possible without additional legislation by clarifying, as appropriate, the statutory definition of who is engaged in the business of dealing firearms as updated by the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. So what they mean there is that if you're doing a private transaction, a private sale in the states that allow it, which is the vast majority of states in America, they're going to try to define you as somebody in the business of firearms. Now, there's various ways they can do this. In the past, they've tried to pass draconian measures like saying that if you sell 2 or more guns in a year or any given time period they make up out of thin air, that you then will be required to have a federal firearms license and do a background check on purchases. That's just me bringing up what they've done in the past. I suspect that they are attempting to do something very similar again. Obviously, in the past, it has been blocked by legislative efforts, and they haven't specified how they're going to do it. But if you look at what the ATF has done in the past, for this process, they have changed who they define as being in the business of firearms. And if you're in the business of firearms, according to the ATF, you are required to have an FFL. I have an FFL, which will come up into play in one of these other points as well. But when you have an FFL and you sell a firearm to someone in America, you have to do a background check on them. That's how it works. So my guess is what they're going to try to do is define, again, some arbitrary number of sales, meaning that if you sell this many, then by law, you are a dealer and you have to do a background check. So stay tuned for further videos on that because I'm sure they're coming knowing this administration, but that is the first bullet point that they're getting. And the next one is going to be they're going to improve public awareness and increase appropriate use of extreme risk protection, i.e. red flag orders, and safe storage of firearms. In addition, President Biden is directing members of his cabinet to expand existing federal campaigns and other efforts to promote safe storage of firearms. So those are two separate things right there. So I believe right now in America, depending on how you define it, there are 19 to 21 states that have red flag laws. And what red flag laws are, just as a very quick overview, is they're a way to deprive an American citizen of due process and remove their right to defend themselves. So hypothetical situation, you are in an argument with your spouse, and your spouse knows that you have guns. Your spouse goes to the local law enforcement and says, this person threatened me with a firearm. The local law enforcement will come without a court hearing of any kind, without a judge, without a jury, and physically strip you of your firearms that you own. And if you do not give them up, then men with guns will force you to give them up. So that is what a red flag order is. Again, removing all due process from the scenario. Now, they're trying to promote that. So my guess is that's going to be marketing campaigns throughout the states that have these types of draconian measures already in place. And then the safe storage of firearms. Again, there are certain states that have laws that mandate how you store firearms. So I'm sure they're going to double down on the efforts for that, but then also push state legislators through lobbying methods to enact laws like this in states that don't have them. The next one, address the loss or theft of firearms during shipping. As many folks watching this video know, there has been a gigantic increase of firearms that have been stolen during shipping. And as it states, ATF data indicates an over 250% increase in the number of firearms reported as lost or stolen during shipment between federally licensed firearms dealers, from roughly 1,700 in 2018 to more than 6,100 in 2022. President Biden is directing the Secretary of Transportation, in consultation with the Department of Justice, to work to reduce the loss or theft of firearms during shipment and to improve the reporting of such losses or thefts, including engaging with carriers and shippers. So I've discussed this in the past here on the channel, but the reason this is happening is because several rules mandated by the federal government have mandated that UPS and FedEx specifically, as well as DHL, but UPS and FedEx specifically, mark firearms and mark ammunition as such on the outside of a package. So for a long time now, for at least 20 years, there has been markings that were required on ammunition, and that had to do with explosives laws in the US, but of recent years, they have mandated that you start marking firearms in a certain way, and every time they track that little shipping code on the label, they know it is a firearm. So not only the drivers, the people delivering it, the people loading the trucks, etc., but at any point along the logistics route, to include, some places have drop-offs at like your local Walgreens or your local CVS. So all of those people who see that firearm, even the outside of it and the package rather, know that the package contains a firearm. So that is why this theft increase has gone up so much. It's not so much that, people are just stealing more stuff. It's that people know their firearms and know that they can get one without having to go through a background check at their local FFL or having to purchase one privately. So that is why that is happening. So the easy way, if they actually wanted to do this, which they don't, but if they actually wanted to do this, would be to remove those labels. But of course, that's not what they're going to do. They're going to, put further restrictions on folks shipping, put further restrictions on FFLs, put further restrictions on everyone in the supply chain without actually addressing the root cause of the problem, which is the government mandate to mark the boxes in the first place. So the next bullet point up is going to be provide the public and policymakers with more information regarding federally licensed firearms dealers who are violating the law. So honestly, I don't know what they mean by this, because as of right now, when a federal firearms licensee like myself, if we actually violate a law, that is public record. So that's not, I don't know what they mean by that, by more information. It's already public. As an example, if an ATF agent comes to your location and does an inspection at your property, inspects your books, those sorts of things, anything they find wrong is already public record. Additionally, should it be bad enough that they revoke your federal firearms license, that is also public knowledge. And I should mention on that right now, under the Biden administration, revocations of federal firearms licensees has gone up dramatically, and that is intentional. That is to remove access, primarily in rural areas, to folks who want to legally purchase firearms. I'm guessing this is just going to be another push in that regard, but I don't know. The details simply are not there. The next bullet point in the press release is President Biden is also encouraging the Independent Federal Trade Commission to issue a public report analyzing how gun manufacturers market firearms to minors and how such manufacturers market to all civilians, including through the use of military imagery. It doesn't have an explanation underneath that, unlike most of the other bullet points, but it's pretty clear to see. What they're very likely to do is go after things like video games, any type of ad campaign that shows like a mom and a dad with their son or daughter teaching them the proper fundamentals of firearms handling, and say that somehow that is bad, needs to be fined, needs to be regulated by the FTC in some sort of way. And of course, they say the FTC is independent, but if the funding is coming from the government, well, then we all know just how independent they are. So stay tuned for that. Again, I think video games are going to be a big one, as well as any type of wholesome or family-friendly type of marketing. And the last bullet point to go over here is advance congressional efforts to prevent the proliferation of firearms undetectable by metal detectors. So they go on to explain, in recent years, we've seen the rise of technology that allows guns to be made with polymers and other materials that are increasingly capable of avoiding detection by metal detectors. President Biden is directing the Attorney General to help Congress modernize and make permanent the Untraceable Firearms Act of 1988, which is currently set to expire in December of 2023. So Again, they don't have any actual specifics on what they are going to do here, but the very easy one that I think they're going to go after is two different things. So number one is going to be 80% frames or receivers. In the past year, really 2 years, they've gone after 80% receivers, which is not a legal definition in any law in the United States. It's a term that the ATF came up with. And they've tried to say that 80% receivers and the jigs that go with them, or separately or together, depending on which case they've actually gone to court with, they've said that those items are firearms under law and cannot be sold without a background check. Now, just recently, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, they have received a gigantic slap in the face by a federal appellate court saying that that's absolutely absurd. The ATF does not have the ability to make law, which they don't, and that folks can sell 80% receivers, receive them, manufacture them, whatever the case may be, without having to go through a background check. I should also mention, it has always been legal, always, literally since before America was a nation, before 1791, it has always been legal for Americans to make their own firearms and use their own firearms, and any attempt to change that would have to go through a constitutional amendment. Obviously, they're not doing that here. And one way I think they're also going to target that, or attempt to target that, is going to be through the use of 3D printers. Obviously, 3D printers are prolific in every industry right now, not just the firearms industry. And many of you at home already own 3D printers and the material to print frames or receivers of various types of firearms, which again, perfectly legal to do so. So I don't know if they're going to go through some sort of tracking mechanism on 3D printer sales or what their plans are. Who knows? I certainly wouldn't put anything past these folks, because they are determined, as I said, to strip you of your civil liberties and your civil rights to defend your family how you see fit. So that's the last one that we're going to cover. There will be a link to this press release down below in the video description, so you guys can check this out for yourself. See, I'm not making any of this stuff up, but hopefully I made that digestible and not just political speak for everyone out there. If you guys are watching this and you're disturbed by every single one of these bullet points, as you should be as a liberty-loving American, please share this video with your friends, because people need to know what's happening. I watched a news report on this earlier, and they absolutely were wrong about everything. And hopefully this will help folks understand what is actually going on in this country. Additionally, there will be links down below in the video description to contact your representatives to let them know that this is unacceptable. And if the president actually attempts to do any of this, that Congress should remove the funding for those programs, so that way they're unable to do so. So that is the action item for this video. Number one, share it with everyone. Let them know what's happening, what's actually happening, not what the news is saying is happening. And then get on the phone with your representatives. Additionally, support organizations that fight these types of things. Gun Owners of America, Second Amendment Foundation, FRAC. There are many others. I missed a bunch of them, but there's a lot of good ones out there. So support those folks that are out there in the good fight, preserving our right to keep and bear arms as we see fit. That's all I have for you. If you like this type of video and you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you've done that and you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel, make sure you're following me on all my various social media pages as well, because these things go up first there and then I make the videos. But if you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week, you can sign up for my email list at the website here on your screen. This email goes out once a month, and it has all of the videos since the previous email went out, so that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content. If you like deals on 3D printers, things that are required to finish off receivers that are printed on a 3D printer, anything like that, anything that we cover here on the channel, you can sign up for my email at the website here on your screen. And this one goes out, this daily deals email goes out every day, and it has 6 or 7 of the best deals that we find around the internet. And if it's in that email, it's the cheapest I know of anywhere on the internet on that particular day. So it saves you guys some time, because I've already done the looking for you, and hopefully saved you some money as well. And with that, we'll close it out. Thank you all for watching. I truly appreciate it. I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.